Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. Your friend David Valentin here to talk about another topic, football related. Are the United States good at football? It's a question that I hear often from friends who happen to live in another country, but it's also a question that is always asked when it comes to the United States and its position in the world and the performance of its national squad. Well, in this video, I'm gonna try to, in a very short amount of time, try to explain an answer that could basically lead to more conversations about this, more debate about this, because this is how we get to solutions. In the women's side, we can definitely say the United States has a lot of success. And why is this? As a Gen Xer, I can tell you that when I was in high school, soccer was seen as a safe sport for women to practice, while men engage in dangerous sports like football, American football, or baseball, or basketball. For many, many years in the United States, soccer was a way for women to be able to become professionals and make a living at it. Today, we have a women's league and a basketball league for women in the United States. But the fact of the matter is that professional athletes, when it comes to the big games, the big sports, continue to be men. The leagues with men in them continue to make the most amount of money. That's a fact. And the sad reality is that the rest of the world is maybe 30 or 40 years behind the United States, and probably the United States will continue to dominate as it has for the last 20 years. It doesn't help that the women of the U.S. national team show complete disrespect, contempt, and arrogance to their opponents, but that doesn't win us any friends. But that's how it is, and that makes it even harder on the men's side. In order to understand the animosity towards the United States when it comes to football, you have to go back at the political and financial and military arena of the world. The United States, as of 2021, is the most powerful, richest, most influential in pop culture, most influential in religion, most influential in basically any arena. It's the only superpower right now in the world. And those who feel inferior, wronged, affected, jealous, uh, or feel hate towards the United States will always try to express this and rejoice when the United States fails at something. They can definitely not defeat us militarily or politically or financially, so sports is the best way to do so. And that's the reason why defeats by the United States in sports are always so celebrated. Now, that said, while MLS has elevated the quality and the fandom of football in the United States and Canada, it has done very little for the American football player. And what I mean with this is the game, the sport continues in the United States to be the sport of the wealthy and those that can afford it. If you were to ask 10 Americans in the street at random to close their eyes and think of soccer, what's the first thing that comes to their mind? They will tell you white, upper middle class kids playing in a park on a Sunday afternoon. That's the reality. And I have said before that when my children played football, my wife and I paid $150 for each child for an 8-week season, which included a game on Sundays and a practice on Wednesdays. That's it. Now, my nephew really wanted to play, but my sister couldn't afford it. So you have two kids that eventually their interest drifted away from football. They were there because basically I asked them to. My oldest son found meaningful relationships so that he made friends. He achieved goals that were really bad. They became really good. But eventually, he wanted to do something else. Dad, I don't want to play football anymore. Okay, so he wanted to do something else. My son is super bright. He wants to be a physicist. And like I said, the lessons learned on the pitch are things that he will be able to apply into his personal life. And he looks back at those years playing football as a fun part of his life. He was really grateful for that. My youngest son drifted away because he wanted to do other things. His interests are into engineering, but he remains a football fan. He's my constant loyal companion at Exploria Stadium when we go see Orlando City. So the league doesn't want to take the responsibility of being an ambassador for the sport. And U.S. Soccer is more concerned with creating a product that is going to be dominant. But we cannot do that, my friends, if we are not planting the seeds at ground level. We're not creating fans and we're not creating great players. One of the things that I mentioned in the video about Daryl DK, a young man from Oklahoma who plays for Orlando City, is on loan at Barnsley in England and is bringing all sorts of praise by the English, which, by the way, they invented the sport. The best football in the world is played in England. So compliments from a very tough crowd, very tough critics, it's always welcome. One of the things that I've said there, and that has been repeated over and over, is imagine if our best athletes chose to play football, soccer. And one of the main issues the United States has is that the pool of available athletes have to be spread among a lot of different sports. Americans do not have a so-called national sport. We really don't. Well, most people say baseball is the national pastime. I beg to differ. It has not been since the 1960s because American football has taken over that mantle. I think that the United States certainly had a time where baseball was the sport of the land, and that the NFL is not going to continue to be the number one sport on the perch as long as U.S. Soccer, MLS, and any other league, USL, NWSL, NPSL, UPSL, NISA, and all these other leagues allow that to happen. I'm going to tell you why the NFL dominates so much. It dominates because we're the only country that plays it. And we paid an obscene amount of money for players to play this game. And to be quite honest, it's it. This is it. This is the microcosm. This sport is for Americans, played by Americans, for Americans, in America. That's it, in the United States. Now, football is completely different. It's a world sport, so anybody can play it. And so, again, not our best athletes go to play football. So, if you compare in Concacaf, the United States and Mexico, Mexican players from very little, they want to be footballers. And I can attest to this because a lot of Mexicans who play basketball and baseball and compete in other Olympic disciplines, let that be the Central American Games, Central American and Caribbean Games, the Pan American Games, we don't see Mexico being this dominant force. Who do we see? The United States. So what happens is the athletes that end up in other sports do so, and I'm not making a blanket statement here, but it's my speculation. Do so because I'm not good at football. That's a fact. Americans rarely pick football, pick soccer as their go-to game right away. Just how it is. If you are to drive into the worst neighborhood in your city and go to a park in that worst neighborhood, or you go into the poorer part of town and you drive to a park where there's a children's league, what are you gonna see there? You're gonna see baseball, you're gonna see basketball, you're gonna see American football. You're never going to see soccer or football. It's not. My friends, for the United States to arrive at the world stage, you have to see kids in the ghettos kicking a football, kicking a soccer ball. That's how we know we have arrived. You don't see that. Because what you see is that the kids playing the sport are doing so sometimes in the hopes of just getting a college scholarship. Or they do so because mom and dad require that you play a sport. And usually those kids have options. When you think of the greatest players in the world, Ronaldo and Messi, you're looking at two kids born in poverty with very few options, coming from some of the crappiest parts of their respective countries. And football was it. It was this of a life of poverty and struggle, a life of sickness, a life of wealth. I mean, this is what happens. So now, last night, the U23s of the United States played Mexico, a game that ended up 1-0. Now, I'm not going to pass judgment on the success of this generation of American footballers on that particular game because, first of all, the U23s were an ensemble of MLS players. Probably not they're good players, don't get me wrong, but they're not the greatest players. And they were led by a man that I have no respect for as a manager, a person that I believe has done more harm to the game in the United States than anything else, and that's Jason Christ. Jason Christ is what I consider a man that achieved notorious fame in the very early days of MLS 1.0, like a lot of people call it. He produces a very stale, boring, predictable type of football, one where scoring is not a priority, I may say, and the result shows it. The United States made a mistake, Mexico capitalized. Now, in order for me to say is the United States equal to Mexico in football, we'll have to see the main team go to head to head against Mexico, and we'll pass judgment there. But one of the things that American football fans need to know is that how Concacaf is built allows Mexico to be the complete top dog, which is detrimental to Mexican football. If we can take Guyana and Suriname and French Guyana out of CONMEBOL, they're physically in South America, but we're taking them out because we have come to the conclusion that there's no way on earth these teams can ever achieve anything playing against these powerhouses. If we can do that, then we can certainly take Mexico out and put it in CONMEBOL. And why being in Concacaf has been detrimental to their game is because they win everything, they defeat everybody, then they go to World Cups or they go to international competitions, and they get their lunch money taken away from them. And the Mexican media wonders, how come? But we win everything here. It's because you don't have any real competition in CONCACAF. CONCACAF, when you look at it, is basically the United States, Mexico, nobody else. Central America can compete based on the geopolitical situations that Central America had to deal with: revolutions, war, poverty, famines. The Caribbean certainly they have lesser populations. Obviously, they're restricted by their size of national territory. Basically, they cannot just visit their neighbors. You have to either get on a boat, get on an airplane. You have communism in Cuba that prevents for-profit league to flourish. You had political unrest and poverty in Haiti. You had political unrest and poverty in the Dominican Republic, which, by the way, is growing as a future powerhouse of football in the Caribbean. And then that leaves basically Jamaica and Trinidad, who still, after having some of the best leagues in the Caribbean, depend on UK-born players to go and make some noise. That's sadly the reality of it all. And when it comes to Puerto Rico, which is where I'm from, it's leaning towards that. It's leaning towards the players born in the mainland, military brats born in the island, to go step forward because there's not a quality league in the island. And when it comes to the U.S. Virgin Islands, their situation is even more precarious than Puerto Rico. But about the result last night, you cannot get better if you entrust our U23s to a man that was fired from his last two MLS gigs. If you look at how Orlando City played between 2016 and 2018, if you look at what New York City looked like in 2015, and you look at the U23s, you're looking at the same team. And I know so because Benjamin Michel and Andres Perea, who play for Orlando City, under Oscar Pareja in MLS, are dynamic players. Benjamin Michel is an aggressive attacker, and Andres Perea is a guy basically supplying passes to the offense and stealing the ball in the midfield and moving it forward. I saw none of that. None of that last night. Again, I saw a very stale football. If we want to be better, we need to make U.S. soccer to understand that we cannot be a refuge for MLS 1.0 guys. The managers that we have, the people leading U.S. soccer, tend to be people that are associated with a lot of individuals that, yes, were pioneers in football here in the United States, but that doesn't make them good. That doesn't make them good. So, I know a lot of U.S. fans are mad that as soon as they lose to Mexico, the Mexican fans jump in their timeline on social media to brag. And my answer to them is, that's the only thing they have. They cannot defeat you financially. They cannot defeat you militarily. They cannot defeat you politically. This is it. This is the crack in the armor. So they're always going to exploit it. Will there be a time where American football is as good as Mexico? I don't think so. The best, the brightest athletes in Mexico play football, not so much in the United States. The football is a religion in Mexico. The the press holds the manager of the national team and their players more accountable than they do their own president and politicians. Imagine if we did that here in the United States. We will have some of the greatest teams ever. The government funnels millions of dollars into the national team. We don't do so much so in the United States. And lastly, as long as MLS continues with the business plan they have, which is a successful one, it has survived. The league has not gone under. It has spread. More people want to watch MLS. More people want to do this, that, and the other. But it's not one that is conducive to bring up great American players. And that's another thing that a lot of people forget when they point out the differences between Liga MX and MLS. Liga MX is a nationalistic league. They have protections and guidelines and check valves to make sure the Mexican player is protected, is well paid, and has more opportunities than the foreigners. MLS not so much so. While you have the international spots and all this other stuff, you can bring a foreigner, and after whatever amount of time that club deems good, that player gets a green card and has the same value as an American-born player. So the fact is that Liga MX is there to produce national team players. MLS, not so much so. And we continue to see that as more American players go to Europe to develop and become the stars of the national team, while MLS players tend to be background actors. So that's it about the topic, as I'm running a little over what I wanted to speak about. Thank you for watching. Hope you found this interesting, informative, and that opens up the debate. Are we ever going to be good? The answer is, I don't know. We don't know. Based on the factors that I have laid in front of you. And will we ever be as good as Mexico? It all depends. We will need a major sporting, cultural revolution for that to happen. I, for one, when it comes to defeats, get mad for an hour, maybe a day, and then I move on. It's entertainment. It's not life. The United States is a great country to be from, to live in, and I'm not gonna minimize everything that we enjoy in this great nation of ours just because we lost a football game. With that said, my friends, thank you again. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, share the content. That is the purpose why I make these videos. Thank you very much. See you guys.